that taught you how to spend money, that taught you boundaries and stuff. Because believe it or not, everybody that comes in our life sometimes shapes our life and how we do things. And so when it comes down to protecting yourself, you got to take that into consideration. Your emotional state. How is your emotional state? And what sacrifices have you made that are destructive? Because if you're making destructive sacrifices, then those sacrifices are in vain. And there's nothing going to come good out of it. I mean, that's like totally no good fruit at all is going to come from a destructive sacrifice. Instead, whatever you sow into, whenever it comes up, it's going to be a mess. And when I say destructive, that means some people are homeless right now because of destructive choices and sacrifices. Some people are right now are in need financially, and they can't get assistance because they have misused and abused the welfare system. And I'm just being real with you. That's the type of things that we have out here now. You know, and when we set healthy boundaries, we learn how to be available for people, and we learn how to be available for ourselves, but not in a way that is going to damage us. So that's a question I want you to dig deep into. Are you protecting yourselves from emotional or physical harm? And physical harm could be, you know, like people fighting on you. Why do you continue to go back to this place where people are jumping on you? You know, long time ago, it was this club I used to go to. And I'm talking about years ago, y'all. I used to go to the club all the time. And every weekend at the club, the same person kept getting beat up. Same person kept running their mouth, kept getting beat up. They had no boundaries. They had no filter either. And so because of that, they would go up in this club and they would get beat every weekend, and then sometimes lose a tooth, black eye, all that stuff. And then they wonder why they were sick and why they were going through so much alcoholism and drugs and stuff. And it's because they had became dependent on going to that club, being the life of the party, by getting the crap beat out of them. Physical harm that they had became addicted to. Sometimes you can become addicted to not even having a boundary and being addicted to the things, the bad things that people do to you. And those are unhealthy boundaries. So are you protecting yourselves from emotional or physical harm? And are you protecting others? Whenever I say protecting others, are you advocating for people who may not know their rights? Like in mental health, I get up and I don't tell people what they need to do. I just talk to them. I tell them my testimony, things that got me through, and I lead them resources. It's up to them to choose whether they want to accept the challenge to be different, to do something different, to further themselves, to gain stability, mental stability. It's up to them to go ahead and take that information that I've given them. And that's a form of protecting them without controlling them, without getting mad because they didn't agree along with it. You know, if they say no, they're not interested, then they're not interested. And I don't have to pursue that anymore. Leave it alone and go on to the next person, because there's always someone out here who does need to hear a word. So these are healthy boundaries. If you are causing division or running in cliques, these are unhealthy boundaries. You know, we see so many times in the churches, you know, there are certain people who sit together all day long. They sit there and gossip together. They ride together. Nobody else is invited in. And nobody's really kicked out, you know. So that's the boundaries that they have, which is very unhealthy, because you don't push away people. When we're representing God, we don't want to push away people, but we want to limit how much negativity that we allow them to commit against us. But we never want to get ourselves off to ourselves and deceive ourselves and think that we are so much higher than anybody else, that we do not have to deal with you. We didn't set our boundary because you're not like me. You don't look like me. You don't talk like me. You don't walk like me. You know, that's an unhealthy boundary right there, because it's very superficial. It's not realistic to think that you're only going to need those people in that little circle. You need people outside of your circle. Do you have people outside of your circle? That's a question there. I want you to write down and answer it. Y'all, these questions are your homework, by the way. Do you have cliques that are causing you to limit your contact with people? Limit who you talk to, your family members. I talk about the family all the time because in certain families, people aren't allowed to talk to other families because of an alt that the grandmother may have had or the grandfather may have had 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And now it's passing down from generation to generation. But you have these little kids that are going to school and they don't know any difference. So they become friends. And now the families find out about one another. And, they get upset. They want to fight. They want to coerce the children into not being friends with that person because of who their great-great-great-grandfather was, which is no longer living. Stuff like that. That's unhealthy boundaries. Boundaries that limit your contact with people. Boundaries that keep you inside, closed in, fixed mindset. That is a destructive behavior. That is a destructive behavior right there. Whenever you don't trust yourself outside of your family structure. Boundaries are there to set the limits so that we don't pick up on destructive behavior. And that we do not engage in the destructive behavior. But we should not ever get to a point where we are so good that we cannot allow others in to help us. Okay, so the next vocabulary word is enmeshment. Now, this is something right here that we do not talk about at all. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I heard this word up until last year when I started doing my counseling and stuff, and I wanted to know more about it. Well, what is this? Why am I feeling like this? Then, because sometimes, have you ever been the person where it just hurts for you to tell somebody no? You know that you need to say no, but you can't set that boundary clear because there is no clear boundaries. You can't set it clear because you feel what they feel. And because of that, that guilt is so overwhelming and so painful emotionally. You go ahead and you say yes to something that you know you do not want to do. Okay, so that is what enmeshment is. It's when you don't know where you begin and they end. Back to identities. You don't know your identity because you never had a chance to develop while you was enmeshed in the family structure, meaning that everybody in that family acts alike, you think alike, you talk alike, you don't never go anywhere, you already know everywhere, you know every detail of each other's lives. And it shouldn't be like that. Because as children of God, He gives us the right to grow up and be who we want to be and follow Him if we choose to. And there are some that don't choose to follow Him. But yet that's not for us to judge them and beat them up because they don't. And I see a lot of times families who do not have clear boundaries, who do not set clear, you know the role is clear, no doubt. The role is clear. You know your mother is your mother, your father is your father, your brother's your brother, your sister's your sister. But roles have no boundaries in these type of family structures, these type of family dynamics. There is no boundaries. So you have the mother getting up there being more than a friend to the daughter. You may have the mother who has children and she has that one favorite one that, she just basically tells them all the time what to do and stuff. And they don't realize that, God, we are a gift from God. As children, you are a gift from God to your parents. And He's the one who created you. They made you, but He created you. And they don't have a right to shut you down for the things that you want to do in your life. So enmeshment children are raised without boundaries. And when you're raised without boundaries, that means you're going to go out into the world and you will treat people any kind of way. And sometimes these children are hurt emotionally and they grow up to be unproductive adults. A lot of the molesters that we see out here, They come from enmeshed families. They had emotional incest relationships with their mothers and their fathers. It didn't happen physically, but it happened emotionally. So see, now that child doesn't know who they really are to their parent, because when their parent needed somebody to lean on, they became the support system for the parent at an age that they was not even able to understand what coping skills was. Y'all know I had to take a sip of water. And so when you find parents that throw their bills and stuff off on these little kids, and they throw their emotions off on these little kids, and these little kids are not equipped to handle your drama, parents. For real, they aren't equipped to handle it. But because that's your child and you feel like you could do your child anyway, you emotionally damage them when they say, I'm going to say, for instance, a baby mama who constantly, instead of going to the baby daddy and saying what she has to say, she comes back to that child and just verbally bruises this child because of what his father is not doing, because they feel like, well, you're an extension of me, and you got to do what I say and how I say do it. And that child, I'm trying to make it clear. You start asking that child questions. Well, what should I do about your daddy? That child is too young to make that type of decision. Are you going to ask your daddy for some money? That child is too young to make that type of decision. And that's crossing boundaries. That child has no business, especially when they're under 18 years old. They have no business trying to figure out how they're going to pay bills and stuff, when that is your position as a parent. You're to guide them and teach them along the way how to spend their money financially. But you are responsible for them. And because some parents don't do that, they end up with children who feel entitled, and the other part of the children feel lost, and they get out here in the world and they don't know what to do. They don't know where they begin and when they end. So boundaries, children raised without boundaries have a hard time accepting the word no. And when somebody says no to them, they think that somebody's being mean to them. They don't understand. No is not always rejection. It just means that you're not ready right now for it, or I don't have it. And they get so upset. And most of the time, when people say no, it just means that they understand that you may not be in that position to pay them back if you ask them to borrow money. You're not in the position to give them another house if you come in there wanting to light firecrackers and set their house on fire. So as adults, we got to set healthy boundaries. If you did not learn them as a child, it's not too late to learn them. If you're listening to this broadcast, it's not too late to learn them. I'm going to give you more examples because I really want to take my time on that and really just let you know how bad having unhealthy boundaries are. For instance, if you live in a home, and as I said about the firecrackers, if you invite somebody to your house and they just, well, I want to light this firecracker, I want to see what it look like. It ain't going to do nothing. I did it before, and it didn't do nothing inside my house, so it's not going to do nothing in your house. Now, this person comes in, and all of a sudden, in your heart, it's wrong for them to light that firecracker in your house, and someone could get hurt. But because you say, well, let me see. When you decide to speak up and say no, wait a minute, let me do it around this way, and then I'm going to come back with the other way. But because you tell them, you're afraid to speak up because you feel how they really want to light this firework in your house. You feel that you may disappoint them if you tell them no. So you don't tell them no, you tell them go ahead and light it. But what ends up happening after they light it is your house burns down. You see how the unhealthy boundary sets in there? You knew the wiser decision, but you couldn't get it out because you lacked the capacity and the emotional structure to give you the strength to say, hey, no, those boundaries, that boundary, to say, no, you can't do that up in my house. We don't do that. And now you don't have a house. So that's an example of an unhealthy boundary. Another example of the unhealthy boundary is whenever you do tell them no, and this enmeshed child gets pissed off and mad